That's super interesting. So we're gonna be talking about like the best argument against God and like things related to this. So I'm curious, especially with like regards to like philosophy of religion and this kind of like topic of like simplicity. What got you interested in like really thinking about like the God debate, kind of like in this kind of like scope of things? So I feel like a lot of times like people like, especially like if you watch like a William Lane Craig debate, it's a lot of like just throwing out like arguments. So what got you interested in thinking about in this like your kind of approach to this topic?
So I worked up to it slowly. I mean, I
Mm-hmm.
started. So when I first was asked to teach philosophy of religion, it was as a casual back in 1990. So at ANU, they needed somebody to teach philosophy of religion. They asked me if I could do it. I said sure, and then I gradually taught myself about the arguments. So I was sort of 1 week ahead of the students. So I just taught a course, 26 lectures on arguments about the existence of God. And so it was kind of piecemeal. And when I wrote the book on ontological arguments, which came a little bit after that, the approach was to find every single ontological argument that had ever been written and to think about what I wanted to say about each of them. And at the end, in that book, I kind of thought that there was this pattern to the criticism that emerged, but I was never really satisfied with what I said that kind of general criticism was. And I sort of, anyway, a decade later, I came back to write a book. I'd been writing stuff in journals about lots of arguments. So I wrote another book arguing about gods, in which I tried to do the same thing that I'd done for ontological arguments, for arguments in general, though that wasn't really possible. I had to be a bit selective in the arguments I discussed. Um, and at the beginning of that book, I tried to say some things about kind of general methodological things about how to go about analyzing arguments. And it wasn't until maybe another 4 or 5 years after that that I started thinking about the kind of more general methodological issues more seriously and started trying to write stuff about how we should conduct ourselves when we have arguments about the existence of God. What's the kind of theory that we should be appealing to when we're working out um, which arguments are good? And gradually that's kind of morphed into this position where I think that, I mean, always thought from the beginning that arguments were not very useful because they never worked, they never succeeded. But to the morph to the idea that really what matters is theory, not argument, and we should be talking more directly about that kind of theoretical virtues of the positions that theists and atheists might occupy rather than about whatever arguments they might have that they could give to one another.